Hey, welcome to another interview on Rainy Bonsai. I'm your host, Jamie. Today I have with me Gene Koo, who has launched a Kickstarter to create a game called Bonsai Diary. Gene, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience before we really dive into things?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure and an honor. My name is Gene Koo. I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is right 1 mile away from Washington, D.C.
That's awesome. So, is it safe to assume that you get down to the National Collection quite a bit?
I am lucky enough to call that my local bonsai collection, yes. And
Oh,
I get
that's
I visit about every quarter or so. Every season is probably a better way to put it.
that's actually really delightful to hear. Not lots of, I think, casual enjoyers of bonsai appreciate the seasonality aspect. But I personally find it to be one of the most exciting things we get to enjoy as practitioners. Okay, Gene, so can I ask how long you've been practicing bonsai?
Well, yes, you can, and the answer is a lot less than most of both your other guests and your viewers. I practiced bonsai when I was a child, and then kind of put it aside for a very long time. And really, I've only picked it up again really through my son, who got into it, and I've been encouraging him. And I have neighbors who are super into bonsai as well, so I practice vicariously.
How can I ask how old your son is that you guys are
Yeah.
developing this bond?
Yes, he's 15 right now.
15, that's
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
great age.
Well, and so my story with bonsai actually goes back to my father, who was a botany major in college in Taiwan, and so I was introduced to plants in general, and I'm still love growing plants. I just never had the knack for bonsai. It was, especially at that age.
Yeah, at that age, you're lucky if you can keep a pothos alive.
Well, yes, and I did do that. That wasn't hard, and but there's something about the bonsai was challenging, and so I think I keep that in mind now when I'm encouraging him as well. But I have neighbors who are super into bonsai. They've taken him under his wing. He was a member of his horticulture club, so he's taking after his grandfather, if not me.
So, how long ago did the two of you, I guess, begin dabbling?
I think this goes back at least 5, 6 years, and so we've gone we've gone through a little bit of turnover, but I sent you some. Unfortunately, it's past nightfall here, so I don't have any live photos. But I sent you some photos of some of, or I will send you some photos of what he's been working on. You've got your very very typical starter ficus, quote unquote
The
ginger.
classics.
Yep, yep. And he's got an evergreen that he's working on right now. He just when he heard about this, he like suddenly went out and he's like, I got to get this to look good enough to be on YouTube. So he went and repotted it over the weekend, and it is
Oh,
looking
that's
excellent.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's part of the I think. And I'd love to chat about this more, but part of the fantasy, I think, for some people with bonsai is the idea that you have a plant that's going to outlive you, perhaps.
I think you're right, and I think especially here in the States, we don't have trees that are even old enough to be left down and be bequeathed. Like it does happen here and there, but we don't have that rich heritage of it. Um, and so I think that's one thing I personally found most exciting about your Kickstarter. Is it really helps to tie in maybe that fantasy that we don't get to see the future generations inheriting our trees, but that is a sweet notion.
I do remember 15-year-old me, and I would love to hear your story, but I remember 15-year-old me when I had my soon to be not alive bonsai, and like actually thinking, yeah, this is something that it doesn't look like much now, but in 30, 40, 50 years, which is closer today,
Yeah.
it's going to be something. And even in the back of my mind, something I could pass along. And while that particular exact fantasy didn't turn out for me, I'm passing it along in a different way in terms of my son actually starting his own plants. I do want to share that also. So my dad, as I said, like was super into just plants in general as a botany major, and actually now as a retiree and back in Taiwan again, he has his own community garden that's like several acres, and he just grows produce all day long. So that's where his
That's delightful.
yeah, his bent has taken him. But he was. I'll be honest with you. He was a little bit of a like a pro Chinese culture kind of a guy, and so he
Mm.
would always like make sure to remind me that bonsai originally came from China and then came from Penjing and all this other kind of stuff. So we had this whole, as you'd expect, Chinese-centric version of the story
Yeah.
of bonsai that was a little bit perhaps different than the American version that we get.
If you feel confident you could retell it, I'd love to hear it.
I don't think I can retell it better than, for example, Wikipedia can.
Oh,
But
that is fair. Sorry, you just made it sound like Dad had
yeah,
this story.
I mean, what I do want to like pull over. This is not a bonsai, but I'm keeping this thing in a bonsai pot for the moment, and ugh, they have fallen over. But these are some of the things that I remember him having a lot of. Um, would be the Penjing decorations, right? Because they're basically little dioramas. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so here's this little boat. I'm about to get dirt all over my keyboard here. So in any event, these are some of the things that I know that he gave me, and I don't quite know what to do with because you see I have them sticking in this not bonsai jade plant that's just they're just
Right.
hanging out there. But you certainly can sculpt like the idea of Penjing is you're more creating the scenery of which trees are only one part of the scenery, and you're making the miniature trees kind of like I guess a model railroad set.
Right. So I don't know how accurate this is, but I've done a
Yeah.
little bit of diving into the pinching, and one thing I thought was interesting because I guess I haven't heard it really talked about was this idea of representing not just a landscape, but like this exact landscape.
Mm. I gotta tell you, I like that because I would now you're setting my mind thinking because I'm always as into like synthesis, right? And I'm just imagining, okay, that's an interesting take because I like the local landscape here depicted through Penjing would be very different because
Right.
I'm here in North America, totally different trees, different landscape, like you wouldn't see the same kind of things here. So those little diorama things have no place in that. There's no boat going down the creek,
Right, right.
right? So
But if you're along the
really neat.
Mississippi, it makes more sense.
Yeah, wouldn't look like that, but yes. So that's really something to think about. That's great. I like that. I might have a new ambition here.
Hey, bonsai folks! I just wanted to let you know that we've added some bonsai tools to the shop and new pottery is arriving all the time. We're adding fresh inventory every week, so check out the link below and see what's new. Thanks for your support.
We were talking a bit about the generationality of bonsai. Am I correct in understanding that was one of your big influences with the game?
Yes. So the game started with a random. I started doing tabletop game design just a few years ago, and that's a whole other story. And somebody I remember one day just tweeted, "Wouldn't it be neat if there was games about intergenerational legacy?" Just thinking out loud, and it instantly came to my head. Oh, bonsai would be an amazing vehicle for that. And then the idea of painting the bonsai page after page and adding to it as it went just kind of came into my head and never left. And within that weekend, I finished the first draft of this game. So it was very much a thought about intergenerational legacy and the idea that something could transcend one person.
Yeah.
I hate to get too into the cultural side of this, but it's like, so many things that we have are very much focused on individual achievement, personal achievement. Like in games, you win as an individual. And obviously, this is one, not a winning game, but two, the idea that something is shared across generations and isn't just about your personal achievement or even an achievement at all, but it's not about you, but something else really appealed to me.
Yeah. And I am actually really excited to get to go hands on with this because it's one thing to hear about it, but I'm sure as a game designer you run into the problem of nobody wants to play a game until they've seen it played.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be very happy to share with you. I don't know, before that, any other thoughts or
Oh,
questions about that before we dive in?
actually, I did want to ask, are you working as a game designer full time? No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you can make tens of dollars in tabletop games.
That's what I thought, but
Yeah.
I did notice that you have another game out, Sticker Doodle. Is that?
Yeah, that's under license, not necessarily out available commercially
Oh,
yet. And I've got,
apologies.
yeah, no, not at all. It's I'm publicly telling people it will one day perhaps be out there. But
Got
yeah,
it.
there's like tabletop game design. It's if you want to be indie, that's a really good place to be indie. And it's like let's do tabletop game design and bonsai. That's like the biggest, most profitable market segment you can imagine, right?
Oh yeah, let me tell you, bonsai is a great living.
That's for your studio audience.
Yeah.
Business tip right there. So, all right. So the Bonsai Diary is a journaling game, and I don't know if people are familiar with what that is, but in a journaling game, you write a journal. What's different about this is, in addition to writing a journal, you're also drawing a journal. And I'm starting on this page because I think this is something that may be relatable to folks. I started right here with a seedling. And I was actually just cruising one of the Reddit subs today and noticing a whole bunch of people were recently posting about their seedlings. And of course, the experienced bonsai pros come in and are like, why are you starting with a seedling? Like, it's going to take you forever just to even get to the point where you can train it. And I don't know what it is. You can tell me if you have this fantasy. I feel like there's something really visceral about the idea of raising a tree from a seedling. I don't know if that's something that appeals to you.
So I actually really enjoy working with young trees. I do know that lots of people who are more established kind of shy away from them, don't want to work with young trees, but I think, especially for folks who are getting started, they're great to practice with. But there is just something really rewarding about taking it low and slow, especially,
Yeah.
if you have the years ahead of you to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have kids, of course, right? But there's also something that feels to me like you're bringing this creature up from a baby. There's something about
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So so one of the things I feel like you can also indulge in this game is that fantasy. There's two fantasies going on here. One is the idea that you can start, and it would actually be practical to start with a seedling. And then this is a sub-strat fantasy of that is you'll notice that this is an oak seedling, not a recommended species. I'm aware of that.
Right?
The local species here that we love is the white oak. Not a great species, I was told repeatedly from our local bonsai association, and its leaves are too big. But one of the
Yeah.
things that I think is cool about this game is if you're super into bonsai, you can indulge your fantasy and go ahead. And if you want a freaking white oak, you can have a white oak because in this version, in this game, that's what you do. So
Yeah.
that's another fantasy is that you can roll in is not only can you raise a tree from an acorn, which I do think just is viscerally appealing to people, you can pick a species that's just not practical in for a real bonsai. So I'll show you how the game works through a couple of pages, and I don't want to bore your folks with too much of this, but the basic thing I discovered is tracing, and I love paper, which I think is interesting because paper is made from trees. Um, and if the affordance of paper in that, like, you can just do so many neat things, and so just the idea of tracing was the first idea I had about um, how you might grow a bonsai. So in this case, we're just on the very first day, and we're going to simply trace that basic stem. At this point, it's not a trunk; it's just a stem. It's a seedling, right? And that's it. Like when you think about the structure of your tree, this is not even there yet. This is just a stem. So we're just going to do that, and part of the story here is you just put it in a pot of whatever the heck is lying around, and in my case, it's probably one of those plastic soup bowls that you get from the supermarket because we have so many of those, and that's just what's lying around. And so I'm just gonna
I love that.
tell that little story. And if you want to give it leaves, you can go ahead and give it leaves. It's not essential, and as you can tell, I'm really making a hash of it. But you know what? This is not an art project. If you don't want it to be, it's a meditative. Everything is good. You're just enjoying the idea of growing a bonsai.
And
So
and just a quick
yeah,
question for you.
absolutely.
Does the game come with brushes, or is it, just kind of use your own utensil?
It is use your own. I've seen most of the times people have played this, they played with pens, markers.
Okay.
Um, I really personally like the brush pens that are out there. But to be honest with you, the reason why I could include those, and if you're familiar with Kickstarter, people constantly throw in extra things to try to get you to spend more money. I am pretty anti-consumerist, so I'm like, you know you best. If you want to do this with crayons or you want to do this with markers, do that. I don't want to make you go buy new stuff.
I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful approach to game design.
So here's our first tree that we planted in that soup bowl or soup container I had lying around. And one of the things that goes along with the drawing is journaling. So, and right now in the beginning is pretty simple. As it goes along, they'll be a little bit more complex. We plant the seedling in something we had lying around. What is it? And I've already answered that question. In this case, it's this soup. Shout out to Supergirl if you're in our area. They make great organic vegan soups. Anyway, so we have
Love
so
it.
many of their containers. Yeah. And so that's obviously what we're going to plant it in. And then what words of encouragement do you whisper as you press the soil down around your seedling? I don't know how many people do this. I'm curious if people actually I'm not going to say a prayer. That's a little too forward, but like just make a wish as they do something like this. Do you do anything like that?
Maybe not make a wish, but I definitely whisper words of encouragement, and like especially when I'm styling a tree or assessing why I think it might not be thriving.
Mm.
There's a day-to-day dialogue that I have, and I know I look a little crazy to anybody watching, but they're my friends.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I really actually feel like that was a pretty neat way to play the game. Like it took us, in case your viewers didn't know, it took us a little bit to synchronize because it was like I just started drawing and then realized, hey, why don't we share this together?
I think that was very contemplative. Dare I say Zen, as tainted as the word can be sometimes. Um, Thank you for bringing this into the world.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's an honor to be able to do it. And what we just did is so in the world of of this kind of indie game, it's often called a solo journaling game, and I was always like, that's funny because like since when do you do journaling any other way than solo, right?
right.
And part of the reason is it's part of the heritage of games. It's like, well, you have to say that it's a solo game because otherwise you expect it to be a two-player or three-player game. But what I've found as I was testing this game is that this has actually been really interesting to play in small groups. Like what we just did is something I've seen people like couples do, where one person does the drawing, the other person kind of answers the question, or they work on the answers together. And I've had some really profound moments just watching couples do that. And then there are parts of this story where they have to ask questions about their future together, which is very touching.
Looking at your Kickstarter campaign, I'm sure it's going to be finished by the time this video comes up, but I see you've earned just about 3 times your goal, so congratulations on being funded.
Thank you.
Can I ask what kind of a timeline you're hoping to have your game out?
Yeah, I mean the game is as you've seen, the basically is complete. I'm still working. I have a ink wash artist in Japan who was really into this game that we're working on a cover.
Beautiful.
That's the only part that's still at large, and if that so that's the last piece to fall into place, and then essentially this is off to the printer, and as soon as I get it from the printer, it's mailed to supporters. So even if the Kickstarter is over by the time this video goes out, there will be additional, because I'm going to order about double the number that are going to get Kickstarted, and so there will be additional copies available even after the Kickstarter ends, and you can go to Kickstarter and order those there.
Oh,
Um,
that's really exciting.
yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm shilling or something, but
Oh, no, no.
you know,
That was the point of having you on tonight. It's okay.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know as creatives, we can have a hard time putting our face on it and being like, hey, please support my art, but you do deserve to have your art supported. This is a beautiful project, and I'm sure the right people will appreciate it.
Thank you, and I really appreciated playing this with you and with somebody who really truly understands bonsai because you know, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome in game design. Like, no one feels like they're a real game designer. And one of the things I get a lot of imposter syndrome about is also like, what do I really know about bonsai? I mean, there is one thing I do know about, which is the fantasy of having a
Oh,
bonsai.
yeah.
So you can tell, like, I've built in a lot of fantastical elements here of like both growing it from a seedling and choosing whatever species you want. And I even encourage people, if you want to make up your own species, that flowers in whatever ridiculous colors you want it to do, go on ahead. Like this is your chance to just make up your own species of tree if you want to, right? So
Yeah.
whatever it is people would enjoy.
Gene, before I let you go tonight, I like to ask my guests to share any point of wisdom with the audience that they'd like to. This does not have to be bonsai related,
Wow.
but it is an open invitation to share some advice you wish you got.
One of the things I'm striving for in a game like this, and this game may not be the best version of it, is it's something that one of the big theorists and practitioners of designing these kinds of journaling games, Paul Sezgi, talks about is tapping into your subconscious as you are doing things like journaling or imagining or being creative. And like I think this is something your audience would understand intuitively because so much of what you're doing is working with your hands and you're very physically involved. And I don't know how much your brain is like firing off stories and words as you're doing that or whether you're just in the moment. But a lot of the world right now involves imposed stories where like people are just telling you what to believe about things. And I think finding these opportunities to just be and be present. And so in the case of um, bonsai, not imposing what you believe should be true, but simply being, right? And
Yeah.
you talked about the conversation, right? So it's like you're listening to your tree and you're not
Yeah.
imposing a story on that tree. It's telling you the truth, and you're listening and you're trying to find that truth. And I think that's true about a lot of things. Like we have stories that people want us to believe, and very few of them are true, whereas what's true often doesn't get put into words. They're not verbal, they're just truth.
Yeah, it's just there kind of under everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we put those stories on things because we need stories. We need to explain the world. But I think one of the beautiful things of practicing something like bonsai is just being in the moment, listening, observing, touching, feeling, all of that, and not having to have to use words the way I'm doing that right now, right?
Yeah.
And just being.
So, guys, check out the links below. We'll have a link to the Kickstarter campaign here so you guys can check it out. Anyways, y'all have a great night. Thank you for listening. Hey, you made it to the end. Look at you go. If you'd like to watch these videos ad-free and support me in what I do, check out the Patreon links below. In the future, some patrons will even see their name right here. But for now, a special thank you to David McPeters. Your support means so much to me. Thank you.